Yeah, time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Yep. So a couple of cut down questions. Diane says it looks in the photo like you leave some sage up and don't cut it flush to the ground. I said, I think you're probably getting as close to the ground as you can, or was the photo misleading?
No, I was in the middle of cutting that back. I'd cut the stuff in the foreground down and was still cutting the rest of it. But I cut down to whatever level I see little green buds. And that might be an inch above ground. It might be all the way down to ground. It just kind of, but you can see them. And I don't care if there's a green bud on every stem. If I see that at that level, at a half inch above ground, there are some green buds, then I cut the whole thing down to that level because the others are going to have buds and develop them there too.
Okay. And then from Carol, it's okay to cut hydrangea and ninebark. Nancy had said it depends on the kind of hydrangea. Carol's
Yes.
also curious about trimming viburnum.
It is time to cut the hydrangeas that bloom on new wood. So the panicle hydrangeas with the pyramidal clusters, and the snowball white hydrangeas, you can cut them all the way down. I cut ours all the way down
Yep.
this week.
And I chipped them.
Yeah,
It's funny,
yeah,
those seed heads going through, they kind of make a dust.
do they really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so you can cut hydrangeas down. I'm sorry, I forgot what the one was besides viburnum, hydrangea, and oh no,
So it was hydrangea ninebark.
ninebark. If you're gonna do ninebark, you're trying to keep the ninebark small, and I think I've said that I've given up on ninebark on any easy way to take care of it to keep it small. At this time of year, I would be taking out at the base. I would be taking some of the oldest branches out, right out of the cluster, and then I'll let the rest go untouched, let it bloom, and then take some more out. There's not much you can do about ninebark to try to keep it small, but yes, you can cut it now if you're doing that kind of cutting. If you want it to grow big, let it grow. Just let it go, and all you would really need to do is every year, at any time during the year, take out some of the oldest branches to let it have room to sprout new stuff. Viburnums, some of them are suckering, and so you'd be taking out suckers from the inside, but most of the viburnums, if you have them for bloom, are blooming on last year's wood. So any pruning that you do on viburnums, you're going to be losing some flower.
Mhm.
But you have to take the hit on a viburnum because most of them are so much bigger than people think they're going to be.
Yeah, everybody pictures a viburnum as a 5 to 8 foot shrub, and very few viburnums are that size.
There's viburnums in Beverly Hills at a client's place that we kept at windowsill height. And they didn't get very many blooms on them because every year we were taking off most of what grew new, and keep thinning them out. I can put pictures in our next time for that because there's still time to do that at our next meeting.
All right. Next up, we have this is kind of just an advertisement. Margaret Hopkins is looking for a dwarf weeping larch. Her daughter in Minnesota is searching for one. So if anyone has one or knows where to grab a dwarf weeping larch, if you can throw it in the chat, or get hooked up with Margaret Hopkins, she would appreciate that.
G Farms.
At G Farms, and they had one at
Steve says he saw one
in Ohio.
Steve says he saw one at G Farms, which is up in Stockbridge, Michigan.
That's who I would check for sure.
And also at North Branch Nursery down in Toledo.
But
I hope that that's our
ago.
native weeping larch and not
Yeah.
the European larch, because the European larch I don't think would be hardy all the way into Minnesota. But our native one would be.
The native one is beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice to have other people to ask questions of. We should probably do that. We should probably have a little segment where we say people are looking for this, and we could have them put up a list. Yeah, that'll be
like a swap meet, a digital swap meet. All right. Chris says, I planted daffodil bulbs last fall, but all I got this year were leaves, no flowers. Wondering why. I said bulbs can be finicky, but that maybe you guys could give a little bit of the tips and troubleshooting for maybe why those daffs came up blind. If they are blind, they might just not be up enough yet.
Right. Ours are not blooming yet. There's some of the very early miniatures are blooming now.
Yeah.
But, ours are not blooming yet. A couple of things can happen. Some daffodil bulbs, especially the ones that are sold in big bunches for naturalizing, are not big enough to flower well if they flower all the first year. That you get the plant and it's true to what it is, but they're not of the top size bulbs that bloom right away. Other bulbs can not get enough cold. If they don't have enough time cold, in the fall, so maybe you planted them really late, or maybe the winter was really warm. They come up too soon when they don't have enough root to support the bulb, and that's when they come up, as Sonia's saying, blind, where you get a flower stalk, but you don't get any flower. The flower doesn't open. So it could be that if you planted them late and the winter was so warm that they didn't get enough time in the ground, it could be that they're still going to bloom later, because all we see right now, we've got maybe
Little shoots.
2 inches of daffodils up. You might see them bloom later, or you might have naturalizing bulbs. I have seen daffodils go away. I planted 100 daffodils in a client's garden and not one of them came up. And we have Brent Heath is going to be speaking with us in May, beginning of May. He's a 3rd generation daffodil grower, and we couldn't come up with what had happened. Why did they just disappear like that? So there are mysteries out there in the world. It's a mystery sometimes.
And I actually could see a couple of crocuses starting to bloom here in Ontario, which is the earliest they've ever been up. But our daffs have not emerged yet.
They're being smart. They're being smart. I saw a couple questions roll by, so I'm gonna let you.
Yep. Yep. We've got Barbara is curious if you could share the name of that sawmill that that was arranging the wood with you.
Oh, no, they weren't arranging the wood with me. The sawmill gave me the name of someone who might be interested in the log.
Right. Sorry, that's what I meant by arranging, facilitating.
And I think that one was Monroe Sawmill, and they're a specialty sawmill in Livonia. But look it up online, just look up sawmills and you'll find them. They're out there. The person that they sent me to is maybe interested, maybe not interested, but I'm not going to give his name. I'd have to give you his phone number right now, not to this many people all at once. I have to tell you that everybody that I talked to and calling around and checking to see where we could do this with the logs, everybody I talked to is our age. Steve's and mine.
Older.
It was a World War II veteran who took down the cherries on his own property and made all that stuff at Jim and Ginny's house there off of 59 on the lake on the other side of where John Lind lived. They did all their woodworking themselves, but there are not that many younger people that are doing that now, so they're timing out. There is a great place called Live Edge Detroit that uses logs, and they work with Arbor Man, an arborist in Livonia. So Arbor Man, who is out there taking trees down and doing pruning anyway, keeps an eye out for logs that are good for Live Edge Detroit. And Live Edge Detroit turns them into those beautiful slab tables and benches. And it's a great place. You want to go there. That's in Troy. Live Edge Detroit.
Karen is curious, what do you do with yuccas in the spring? And my reply is, it depends if I get to it. If it's looking real ratty, I'll clean it up. Otherwise, I'll just ignore it until it pops nicely on its own.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's the actual answer?
The actual answer is do whatever you think you can do with the yucca. What did Kurt tell me the one time? That he wrapped a chain around it and pulled it off with the car because he was tired of cutting all the leaves individually. But I try to clean them up because they can look pretty nasty. And if I'm growing a yucca in the garden, I'm growing it for its beautiful foliage, not for all the stuff that accumulates. So I'll cut off all of the old ones, or if I don't care if it blooms, because I don't care most of the time if I get yucca blooms, I can just cut the whole thing off to accomplish the same thing that Kurt did by pulling it off with the chain. It's still going to sprout right back up again. Yep. You can't kill a yucca by slicing it.
I don't know if you kill it.
Most of the body of the yucca is buried underground and it's going to come right back. So you can just slice the whole thing off. I wouldn't want you to use a chainsaw that low to the ground, but I've used a regular hand saw and just clean off enough leaves on one side of the yucca so that I can get to the stem, and then I saw right through the stem at ground level and roll the whole thing out of the ground and let the yard waste operator with their grinders deal with it.
Yeah.
Take an axe to it. Yes, Gretchen. Take an axe to it. They are. And be aware that if you take them off repeatedly like that, they might multiply and you might end up with 3 or 4 yuccas coming up in one place.
There's a life lesson in that, I think. Speaking of tools, Robin says, I have tall clumping grass roped tight to hold upright for the winter. Is there a technique to cut down tall clumping grasses and tools? Last few years I used a sharp knife, but a hard job. Yeah, yeah. Any Milwaukee power tools used? Cam would say Sawzall.
Yeah, I've had people
If
tell
it's
me
a,
that
if it's a big miscanthus, you might as well use a saw or something,
This-
some of the shears won't even cut it.
yeah, shears won't cut through many of those grasses, and I almost always end up cutting them by hand.
With
Bunch of
hand
stems bunch of stems clip, but I do tie them up tightly first so that so that they all fall in one clump.
Yeah.
There is a machine that you can rent or you can buy if you have a lot of grasses to do. At Michigan State, Art Cameron bought their own brush trimmer, and that's what they're called at the rental places. It's a brush trimmer. It looks like a long wand and a motor, as you would see people with a weed whip, but it doesn't have a string cutter. It has a fixed blade like Perils of Pauline or a sawmill blade, and you can use that. But that's only practical if you either have a lot of grasses to do or have somebody who loves to buy tools. It's sometimes giving somebody license to buy a tool. Hello, dear, could you look around for this brush trimmer for me? Because I'd like to have a brush trimmer to cut this down. I did get some power grass shears from a friend a couple of years ago. So it looks like a hedge trimmer, but it's just a little blade. But it's really meant for for lawn grass, and it's not
Yeah, it
heavy.
doesn't work for those bigger grasses.
Yeah, you're looking at the reason that Steve and I don't grow big grasses anymore. I got really tired of cutting those down. I'll cut down my sister's.
They're even harder to divide.
Burning them works, but Steve will tell you that the flames go up about 18 feet into the air. And, yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And that's Nina was just saying their neighbor used gasoline in a lighter.
Gasoline
And
on
hoses.
Oh my gosh, Sonia, you remember what that grass did?
Yep. Yep. I mean, that was in the drier summer though.
But
I think.
no,
Yeah, potential.
but still, it was dry.
Anyway. Yep.
Okay.
I think that's all the questions that we have for this round. My apologies if I forgot anyone. Please just ping me in the chat and I'll get you in the next round.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll call that the end of In Our Garden today and move on.